Helen Radcliffe disliked surprises. They usually arrived dressed as kindness and left her poorer than before. So when the maid appeared at her door just past noon and said, "Mrs. Whitcomb requests you downstairs at once," Helen knew, before she even stood, that her position had ended. She closed her book carefully. No rush, no flinch. Panic was for people who hadn't learned better. Downstairs meant decisions made without her. She smoothed her sleeves, checked her hair, and went. Mrs. Whitcomb was already seated in the front sitting room, posture bright with anticipation. She looked pleased with herself in the way people did when they believed they were being generous. A man stood near the mantel. He turned as Helen entered. Tall, well-dressed, confident without effort, the sort of man who assumed rooms would arrange themselves around him, not dangerous-looking, which was worse. "Helen," Mrs. Whitcomb said quickly, "there you are. I've taken the liberty." Helen stopped 3 steps inside the room. Taken the liberty. Of course she had. "I know you never ask," Mrs. Whitcomb continued, waving a hand as if independence were a charming quirk, "but I simply couldn't allow you to leave without prospects." Helen kept her smile in place. Barely. "A prospect," she repeated. "Yes, a position. A very respectable one." Mrs. Whitcomb beamed. "This is Mr. Horatio Beaumont." Horatio inclined his head, not deferential, acknowledging. Helen returned the gesture, then folded her hands loosely in front of her. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" His mouth twitched. He hadn't expected that tone. "I understand you're seeking employment," he said. "I understand I was not consulted," Helen replied lightly, then turned to Mrs. Whitcomb. "My notice isn't until the end of the week." Mrs. Whitcomb laughed nervously. "Oh, Helen, don't be difficult. He's offering you an opportunity." Helen turned back to him. "Then perhaps," she said, "you might tell me what the position entails." A beat. Horatio studied her more carefully now. "I require a private secretary," he said, "temporary, organized, discreet." "Discreet about what?" Helen asked at once. Mrs. Whitcomb sucked in a breath. Horatio raised a brow. "About business," he said. "What business?" He paused. Not because he didn't know, because no one usually asked. "Household matters, correspondence, appointments." "And I would be working from your home," Helen said. "Yes." "Who lives there?" Another pause. Mrs. Whitcomb shifted. "Helen." "No," Helen said calmly. "If I am to enter a man's household, I need clarity." Horatio crossed his arms. "There is no wife," he said shortly. "Children?" "No." "Extended family?" "Occasional." "Staff?" "Competent." Helen nodded once, absorbing it. "And your expectations of me beyond the work?" she asked. "Social attendance, travel, personal errands?" Horatio let out a slow breath. "You're thorough." "I'm careful." "That can become tiresome." "So can surprises," Helen replied. Mrs. Whitcomb laughed too brightly. "You see why I thought you'd suit one another? Such spirit." Horatio did not smile. "And you?" he asked Helen suddenly. "Are you married?" "No." "Attached?" "No." "Why not?" Helen's eyes flicked up, sharp. "Is that relevant to the duties?" "It speaks to stability." She tilted her head. "Or vulnerability," she said. "Which one concerns you?" Silence dropped into the room. Mrs. Whitcomb looked between them, alarmed now. Horatio's jaw tightened. "I am not accustomed to being interrogated," he said. "I am not accustomed to being recruited without consent," Helen replied evenly. "We're both uncomfortable. That seems fair." He stared at her. Then he nodded once, curt. "I don't think this will suit," he said. Mrs. Whitcomb gasped. "Mr. Beaumont." "No," he continued. "I require someone adaptable, cooperative." Helen smiled. "And I require an employer who answers questions." He picked up his gloves. "Good afternoon, Miss Radcliffe." He did not bow. He left. The door closed with finality. Mrs. Whitcomb sagged back into her chair. "Oh dear, oh Helen, I truly thought—" "It's all right," Helen said, already turning toward the stairs. "I leave tomorrow." That night, Helen lay awake in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. What a silly man, she thought, competitive with questions, as though clarity were an insult. She rolled onto her side, and yet a traitorous part of her added, he listened. Annoying. The next morning she dressed early, packed light, one case, books in another. Independence travelled easier that way. She was halfway down the stairs when Mrs. Whitcomb called her name. "Helen, please, wait." Helen turned. Horatio Beaumont stood in the receiving room. No gloves this time, no coat, slightly dishevelled, as though he had argued with himself and lost. "I owe you an apology," he said. Mrs. Whitcomb clasped her hands. Helen descended the remaining steps slowly. "You dismissed me," she said. "Yes." "And now you've returned." "Yes." "Why?" He met her gaze directly. "Because I mistook confidence for challenge," he said. "And because I'm not accustomed to women who refuse to soften themselves." Helen considered him. He continued, quieter now. "That was my failing, not yours." She curtsied, proper, controlled. "Apology accepted," she said. Relief crossed Mrs. Whitcomb's face. "You see, I told you—" Horatio held up a hand. "I would like to offer the position again," he said to Helen. "On your terms." She raised a brow. "All of them." He nodded. Mrs. Whitcomb leaned forward eagerly. "You won't regret it, Helen. I know you won't." Helen looked between them. Then she smiled. "We shall see," she said. And for the first time, Horatio Beaumont looked uncertain whether he had won, or merely begun. Helen did not accept the offer immediately. That, too, was deliberate. She took the agreement upstairs with her, unfolded it on the narrow desk, and read it once. Then again. Then a third time, slower. The terms were clean, too clean. 4 months, defined duties, monthly wages, paid directly, private rooms, exit guaranteed, no clause for gratitude, no clause for loyalty, no clause for staying. Helen pressed her thumb against the paper. "This is how they get you," she thought, "by pretending they won't." A knock sounded at the door. Sharp. Certain. Helen folded the agreement and slid it into her reticule before answering. "Yes." Mrs. Whitcomb entered without waiting. She looked relieved already, which Helen disliked. "You'll take it, won't you?" the widow said at once. "Mr. Beaumont is so respectable, and it would be such a worry off my mind." "Of course it would." Helen kept her voice even. "I have not agreed to anything." Mrs. Whitcomb waved a hand. "But you will. You must see how fortunate this is." Fortunate. That word again. Helen stood. "I see how convenient it is." The widow blinked. "Helen—" "I will finish the week," Helen said, as promised. Mrs. Whitcomb hesitated, then nodded, already moving on. "Of course. Of course." The matter was settled in her mind. Helen watched her go. That, she thought, is dependence. She spent the afternoon walking, not wandering. Walking. Movement helped her think. She traced the familiar streets without looking at them, counting her coins in her head, measuring days against costs. 4 months meant stability. Stability meant risk. Risk meant attachment. Helen stopped near the river, watching the water move past without concern for what it left behind. "Do not be impressed," she reminded herself. Impressed people stop negotiating. A carriage rolled past. She did not look up. She returned at dusk to find another knock waiting for her. This one was lighter, less certain. The maid stood in the corridor again. "Miss Radcliffe, Mr. Beaumont asks if you will see him." Asks. Not summons. That was new. Helen considered refusing. She did not. "Very well," she said. She followed the maid downstairs and into the same receiving room. Horatio Beaumont stood near the window this time, seated, still. The fire burned low. He turned his chair slightly when she entered, not rising, not apologizing, correct. "You've read the agreement," he said. "Yes." "You have questions?" "Yes." He waited. Helen did not sit. "I will not be managed," she said. "I wouldn't attempt it. I will not be softened," she continued. "That would be inefficient." Her mouth nearly curved. She stopped it. "I will leave at the end of the term," she said. "No extensions, no persuasion. Agreed. You will not ask where I go next." "I won't care." That was honest. She appreciated that against her will. "And if I refuse?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. The pause was measured. Then I will find someone else. No threat, no pressure. Just fact. Helen searched his face. He did not look away. Annoying, she thought. Men should try harder when they want something. She reached into her reticule and removed the agreement. She did not hand it to him yet. One condition, she said. His brow lifted slightly. Speak. You do not inquire into my personal life. I have no interest in it. Lies, Helen said calmly. You are observant. He accepted that. Observation is not inquiry. She considered him. That distinction mattered. Then we understand each other, she said. She placed the paper on the table. He did not reach for it. Not yet. You should know, he said. This position will not be quiet. Helen's fingers rested lightly on the wood. I'm not afraid of noise. No, he said. You're afraid of need. That struck closer than she liked. She straightened. Fear implies weakness. Fear implies awareness, he corrected. A dangerous man, not because he pushed, because he noticed. She signed the agreement. The sound of the pen felt loud in the room. When she finished, she slid it toward him. He took it then, nodded once. You'll depart in the morning, he said. A carriage will be sent. Of course, she turned toward the door. Miss Radcliffe. She stopped. Yes? You may leave early tonight. A courtesy. She did not thank him. Good evening, Mr. Beaumont. Good evening. She left without looking back. That night, Helen lay awake longer than usual. Not anxious, alert, she had accepted the position. That was done. What unsettled her was not the work. It was the precision. Men who planned exits were rare. Men who offered them were dangerous. She turned onto her side. 4 months, she told herself. Then I go. She repeated it until the words felt solid. They did not. At dawn, the carriage arrived. Mrs. Whitcomb kissed her cheek, already nostalgic. Helen endured it. She stepped into the carriage without regret. As the house fell away behind her, she felt the familiar relief. Departure was easy. Arrival was the risk. Beaumont House rose ahead. Waiting. Beaumont House did not announce itself. It revealed itself slowly, stone first, then gates, then a long drive that suggested permanence without apology. Helen sat back in the carriage and watched it approach without comment. She did not admire it. She did not shrink from it. She catalogued. That was her habit. The carriage slowed. Horatio did not offer his hand when she stepped down. He waited. Helen descended on her own. Good, she thought. At least he understands that much. Inside, the house was orderly without warmth. Clean, quiet, controlled. A house that expected obedience. Helen took that in too. A woman stood at the foot of the stairs, tall, composed, watching. Mrs. Beaumont did not smile. She did not frown either. She assessed. So, she said, you are Miss Radcliffe. Helen curtsied. Mrs. Beaumont. The older woman's gaze flicked briefly to her son, then back. You arrived sooner than expected, Helen answered honestly. I prefer beginnings that do not linger. That earned her a pause. Then a nod. Very well, Mrs. Beaumont said. You may follow Mrs. Hale. A housekeeper appeared at once, efficient, quiet. Helen followed her upstairs. She did not look back. She felt Horatio's gaze anyway. Her rooms were modest, clean, functional, private. Helen approved. Mrs. Hale gestured. Supper will be at 7, she said. If you require anything, I won't, Helen replied gently. The housekeeper blinked, then left. Helen shut the door and stood still. No gilding, no excess. Good. She removed her gloves and set them down carefully. 4 months, that was all. Dinner was restrained. Mrs. Beaumont spoke of the weather, of neighbours, of repairs being planned to the east wing. Horatio said little. He watched. Helen noticed that too. He noticed when she ate, when she didn't finish the bread, when she listened rather than spoke. That was irritating. You'll find the household quiet, Mrs. Beaumont said. We do not entertain frequently. Helen smiled politely. I'm fond of quiet. Horatio glanced at her then, brief, sharp, as if that had surprised him. After supper, Helen excused herself. She had unpacked only essentials. She preferred readiness to comfort. Downstairs, Horatio remained where he was. He told himself he was thinking about correspondence. He was not. He was thinking about how easily she had moved through the house, as if she did not need permission to exist within it. That unsettled him. The next morning, Helen rose early. She dressed plainly. She descended without announcement. The servants noticed. They always did. Horatio found her in the morning room. Reading, of course. "You're awake early," he said. "I don't sleep when things are unfinished." That was not an invitation. He accepted it anyway. "You'll find the pace here slower than you're used to." "I'll adjust," she replied. He nodded. Then, "You'll want the carriage on Saturdays." She looked up. Yes. He waited. She waited. Finally, he said, "You attend the reading room." She did not ask how he knew. She only said, "I do." A pause. "It's unnecessary," he added. Her brow lifted. "That," she said, "is debatable." He held her gaze. "You could request anything you need brought here." "I won't." That was firm, not rude, final. Horatio exhaled once, very quietly. "As you wish," he said. She returned to her book. Conversation over, or so she thought. On Saturday morning, the carriage was waiting. Horatio was already inside. Helen stopped. He looked up. "I was going into town," he said. She said nothing. She stepped in. The carriage rolled forward. Helen stared out the window. Horatio pretended to read. Neither mentioned the obvious. That suited them both. As the town came into view, Helen thought, he could have sent the carriage. And Horatio thought, she didn't thank me. Both thoughts lingered longer than they should have, and neither of them admitted why. The second Saturday unfolded exactly like the first, which was how Helen knew it was no accident. The carriage was waiting. Horatio was already inside. He did not look up immediately. "I'm headed into town," he said, as if reading her thoughts were part of the route. Helen paused. She could refuse. She did not. She stepped in and shut the door herself. The carriage rolled. She said nothing. So did he. That silence was new, not awkward. Watchful. Helen opened her book. Horatio pretended not to notice which one it was. He noticed. He always noticed. At the reading room, he did not linger. He stepped down first, offered no hand. He said, "I'll return at noon." "Not the carriage will return. I will." Helen looked at him then, just long enough. "You needn't," she said. "I know." He said it easily. Too easily. She stepped away before he could say more. He watched her enter the building. Only then did he leave. At noon he was back, precisely. She emerged with a different book tucked under her arm. He clocked the spine. Essays, again. "You read slowly," he said as she climbed in. "I read thoroughly." He nodded, as if that explained something. By the third weekend, the servants had noticed. By the fourth, they had accepted it. Saturday meant town. Town meant the carriage meant him. Helen did not thank him. Horatio did not ask her to. They spoke of small things, weather, road conditions, nothing at all. But he noticed when she frowned at a page. He noticed when she marked a passage twice. Once, he said, without looking at her, "You disagree with the author." Helen startled. "I do." He simplifies. "Yes." Silence. Then, "I dislike that as well," he added. She closed the book slowly. "That surprises me." It shouldn't. She studied him. He kept his eyes forward. One afternoon he did not come. The carriage arrived alone. Helen froze at the foot of the steps. She hesitated, then climbed in. She did not read on the way. At the reading room, she could not focus. At noon, the carriage returned. Still without him. She did not comment. She did not like that she noticed. The following Friday evening, a parcel waited in her sitting room. Unmarked, unadorned. Inside were books, not one, several, an entire collection. Her breath caught. She recognized the author immediately. She carried the stack downstairs without hesitation. Horatio was in the study. She did not knock. "These," she said, placing them on the desk, "are unnecessary." He glanced down. "Oh, those. "You purchased them," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "So you won't need to go." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't ask you to do that." "I know." She pushed one book back toward him. I won't accept them. He looked up then. Finally. You already read them. That isn't the point. No, he said calmly. It's the problem. She folded her arms. I don't accept convenience that becomes obligation. He leaned back slightly. I didn't ask anything in return. That's worse. Something flickered in his expression. Not anger, recognition. You'll still go to the reading room, he said. Yes. He nodded once. Then keep them. She hesitated, then took the books. Not all, only one. I'll return the rest. If you wish. She left before he could say anything else. That night, Helen read. Not the book she had chosen, one he had. She hated that she liked it. Down the hall, Horatio stood at the window. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself it meant nothing. And yet, when Saturday came, he was in the carriage again, as if it had never been in question. They arrived on a Tuesday, which irritated Helen immediately. Weekends belonged to the reading room. Weekdays belonged to order. The carriage rolled into the drive just after noon. Helen was crossing the hall when she heard it. Laughter first, too loud, unapologetic, then a child's voice, sharp, curious, unrestrained. Helen slowed. That was new. Mrs. Beaumont was already in the receiving room. Her posture had tightened. She did not approve of interruptions. Horatio, she said coolly, your guests have arrived. Guests, plural. And a woman entered before the footman could finish announcing her. Well-dressed, self-possessed, too familiar with the space. Horatio, she said brightly. It's been years. He stiffened. Sidoni, he replied. Not warmly, not coldly, cautiously. Helen noticed that immediately. A boy followed her in. About 7, bright-eyed, already bored. He looked around once. This place smells like rules, he announced. Helen bit her lip. Sidoni sighed. Arthur, behave. Arthur ignored her completely. He wandered toward Helen instead. You don't look boring, he said. Helen raised a brow. High praise. Who are you? Helen. He nodded, as if that settled everything. I like you. Sidoni laughed lightly. He says that to everyone. Arthur shook his head. No, I don't. Helen felt something warm settle unexpectedly in her chest. Horatio noticed. That surprised him. Introductions followed. Sidoni Fairfax. Neighbouring estate. Childhood familiarity. Not a visit for tea. A stay. We're restoring the house, Sidoni explained, waving a hand. Everything's still covered. Impossible to live there. Mrs. Beaumont's lips thinned. And how long do you intend to impose? She asked. Sidoni smiled sweetly. Only until the work is finished. A few weeks. Perhaps a month. Arthur groaned. A month is forever. Helen said mildly. It passes quicker than you think. Arthur brightened. You'll talk to me? Yes. He grinned. Horatio watched the exchange. He told himself it was politeness. It wasn't. The change was immediate. Noise where there had been quiet. Movement where there had been restraint. Arthur followed Helen relentlessly, asked questions, challenged answers, tested boundaries. She met him every time, firm, patient, unimpressed. Horatio observed from the edge of rooms. He told himself he was monitoring disruption. He wasn't. That afternoon, Sidoni found Helen near the window. You're his secretary, she said lightly. Yes. Sidoni tilted her head. He's never kept one long. Helen didn't blink. I expect to leave when my term ends. Sidoni smiled, not kindly. He notices you. Helen returned the smile. Men notice efficiency. Sidoni laughed. Oh, you're interesting. That wasn't admiration. That was curiosity sharpened into intent. At dinner, Arthur dragged his chair beside Helen's. She doesn't listen, he announced, pointing at his mother. Sidoni sighed. Arthur! She listens, Arthur insisted. Helen did. When Arthur knocked over a glass and froze, it was Helen he looked to. She handed him a cloth. No tragedy, she said. Try again. He did. Horatio exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. Later that evening, Helen walked the corridor toward her rooms. Arthur padded after her. Will you be here tomorrow? Yes. And Saturday? Yes. Good. He considered this. You make this place better. She stopped, knelt so they were level. That's kind of you. Arthur nodded solemnly. I know. Downstairs, Horatio stood near the hearth. Mrs. Beaumont joined him. She changes the atmosphere, she said quietly. Horatio did not deny it. She steadies the child, his mother added. He thought of Helen's hands. Calm, certain. Yes, he said. Mrs. Beaumont studied him. This time she did not look reassured. She looked wary. Saturday came. The carriage waited. Horatio was already inside. Arthur burst from the house. I'm coming too, Sidonie protested half-heartedly. Arthur ignored her. Helen hesitated. Horatio met her gaze. Unless you object. She didn't. Arthur wedged himself between them, triumphant. Helen laughed before she could stop herself. Horatio heard it, for the first time, and thought, this is no longer contained. Not because he was losing control, but because he no longer wanted to regain it. Arthur decided quite firmly that Helen belonged to him, not in possession, in preference. He appeared at her door every morning before breakfast, sometimes with questions, sometimes with crumbs, once with a dead leaf he believed was important. Helen never sent him away. She redirected, she negotiated, she listened. Horatio noticed all of it. He noticed that Arthur stopped sulking, that tantrums shortened, that silence no longer meant defiance. One morning, Arthur refused to eat. I don't like eggs, he declared. You ate them yesterday, Sidonie said sharply. That was yesterday. Helen leaned over, lowered her voice. Try one bite, she said. If you still dislike them, I'll trade you half my toast. Arthur considered. He took the bite, chewed, swallowed. They're still bad, he said. Helen slid her toast across. A bargain honored. Horatio watched from the doorway. He said nothing, but when the footman later cleared the tray, the eggs were untouched. No one commented. Sidonie began watching Helen more closely. Too closely. You manage him well, she said one afternoon, strolling beside her in the garden. Helen did not slow. He manages himself, she replied. I only give him space to do it. Sidonie smiled thinly. Horatio saw that smile from the terrace. He did not like it. That evening, Arthur insisted on sitting between Helen and Horatio. You're squishing me, Sidonie complained. Arthur leaned harder into Helen's side. She's softer. Helen hid her smile. Horatio did not. Sidonie noticed. Her gaze sharpened. Later, Helen found Horatio in the library. He was not reading. He was standing at the shelves. You reorganized, he said. Yes. He turned. Without asking. Yes. A pause. I approve, he said. That surprised her. She recovered quickly. You're learning. He almost smiled. The following Saturday, Helen prepared for the reading room. Arthur trailed her like a shadow. Can I come? She crouched. Not today. He frowned. Why? Because you'll be bored. He brightened. I like bored. Bored means stories. She laughed. I'll bring one back for you. That satisfied him. Horatio appeared at the door. I'll take you in. She did not look up. You always do. That was not gratitude. That was fact. In town, Horatio did not leave immediately. He waited, she noticed. You're lingering? Yes. Why? He shrugged. I thought I might look around. She studied him. You don't browse. No. You hunt. A beat. I've been known to adapt. She shook her head. You're terrible at pretending not to care. He glanced at her sharply. I don't... She stepped down from the carriage. I'll see you at noon, she said, and walked away. Horatio stood still. Then, instead of returning to the carriage, he followed her, at a distance, like an idiot. Inside the reading room, Helen selected her books carefully. She felt his presence before she saw him. You said you were leaving, she said quietly. I said I might. She turned. You don't belong here. He looked around. It's a room of books and independence. That landed. I'm not taking that from you, he said. Then stop trying to replace it. He hesitated. That was answer enough. That afternoon, a parcel arrived. Again, smaller this time. Inside was a single book, the one she had almost taken earlier. No note, no explanation. She stared at it for a long moment, then laughed under her breath. Incorrigible man! She did not return it. That night, Arthur curled beside her in the drawing room. "Will you stay forever?" he asked. She stilled. "No. Why not?" "Because I don't belong to places," she said gently. "Only to myself." Arthur frowned. "That's stupid." She smiled. "Yes." Across the room, Horatio watched her say it, watched her mean it, and understood something he hadn't allowed himself before. He didn't want her to belong to him, he wanted her to choose him, and that was far more dangerous than dependence. The invitation arrived on thick cream paper. Horatio read it once, then again, then set it aside as if it were nothing. Helen noticed. She always did. "You're attending," she said. He looked up. "Yes." "And I'm not." "That," he replied calmly, "is incorrect." She closed her book. "I'm not required." "I didn't say you were." That made her look at him, properly. "You don't need a secretary for a supper," she said. "No," he agreed, "I don't." Silence stretched. Then, "I need you," he added, as if stating the weather. Helen's fingers stilled on the page. "That's not the same thing," she said carefully. "No," he said, "it isn't." He let that sit. She hated that he did. Mrs. Beaumont approved the decision immediately. "You should attend," she said to Helen over tea. "People will expect to see someone competent at Horatio's side." Helen smiled politely. People always expected things. Sidonie, on the other hand, watched from the corner of the room, too alert. "So," she said lightly, "you'll be accompanying him." Helen met her gaze. "For work?" Sidonie smiled. "Of course." The word did too much work. The evening arrived dressed in silk and noise. Helen wore blue, not soft, not loud, certain. Horatio noticed the moment she entered the room. He told himself it was efficiency. It wasn't. "You're late," he said quietly. "You didn't give a time." A pause. "That's fair." They moved together through the crowd, not touching, not separate, together. Eyes followed. Whispers adjusted. Sidonie appeared at Horatio's elbow within minutes. "Dance with me," she said, as if it were habit.
Don't be afraid, my dear.
Helen felt it then.
Everything
Not
will be
jealousy,
all right.
awareness. Horatio hesitated. Just a beat too long. "I can't," he said. Sidonie blinked. "You always did." He glanced at Helen, then back. "I don't now." That was new. Sidonie smiled, tighter. "Another time," she said. She did not mean it. Music swelled. People laughed. Helen stood beside Horatio, observing. He leaned closer. "Do you dislike this sort of thing?" "I dislike pretending," she said. "So do I." She glanced at him. "That explains why you look miserable." A corner of his mouth lifted. Only mildly. Someone approached. Introductions were made, compliments delivered. Helen answered with precision, no charm wasted, no apology offered. Horatio watched her handle attention without courting it, watched her refuse to soften. He felt an unfamiliar heat settle in his chest. Pride, which was inconvenient. Later, when the crowd thinned. "Walk with me," he said. That was not work, that was choice. They moved to the edge of the room, closer now, not touching, but close enough to feel. "You don't enjoy being watched," she said. "No." "You don't enjoy disappointing people." "No." She considered. "And yet you did." He met her eyes. "Yes." Her pulse kicked. She hated that. Sidonie watched from across the room. She saw it, the tilt of his head, the way his attention never strayed far. She approached Helen later. "You're very composed," she said. Helen smiled faintly. "I've had practice." Sidonie leaned closer. "He doesn't usually change his habits." Helen's smile didn't move. "Neither do I." That ended it. When the evening finally ended, the carriage felt too small. Helen stared straight ahead. Horatio did not read. "You were right," he said quietly. "About?" "Being unnecessary." She looked at him. "And yet," he continued, I didn't want you anywhere else. That was the most honest thing he'd said all night. Helen said nothing, but when the carriage stopped, she waited for him, just long enough. For the first time, she wondered, how long before this becomes something neither of us can pretend is practical? And Horatio thought, how long before she realizes I've already chosen her? Neither spoke it, which made it worse. Time did not announce itself. It accumulated, quietly, persistently. By the second month, Helen no longer startled the house by existing in it. She had become part of its rhythm. Morning correspondence, afternoon walks, evenings spent reading while Horatio worked nearby. Not together, not apart. Together enough. Horatio began scheduling meetings later than necessary, not because he needed more time, because he preferred to keep her nearby. He did not say this, he simply did it. Helen noticed. She did not comment. Weekends continued as before. The carriage, town, the reading room. Horatio pretended it was convenience. Helen pretended she believed him. One Saturday, rain came hard and sudden, sheets of it. The carriage slowed. "We can turn back," he said. "I have an umbrella." "You'll ruin your shoes." "They're already ruined," she replied. She stepped down anyway. Horatio watched her go. Then, without thinking, he followed. They walked back together, soaked, laughing. Arthur greeted them like a conquering hero when they returned. "You look like criminals," he announced. Helen wiped rain from her eyes. "We escaped," she said. Arthur approved. Sidonie did not approve. She began inventing reasons to require Horatio's attention. Dinner invitations, requests for opinion, plans for her own house. Helen was never excluded, but she was always watching, and Horatio began declining. Politely, consistently, Sidonie noticed. She adjusted. One evening, Helen stayed late in the library, too late. She rubbed her temples. "You're tired," Horatio said. "Yes." "Then stop." "I can't." He stood, took the papers from her hands, set them aside. "That's not a request," she said. "No," he replied. "It's concern." She looked at him, really looked. "You notice when I'm unhappy?" "Yes." "Why?" He didn't answer immediately, because the answer frightened him. "I pay attention," he said instead. That was enough. For now. Arthur took to sitting between them whenever possible, at supper, in the drawing room. Once, on the floor, leaning against Helen's knee. "Stop encouraging him," Sidonie said sharply. Helen did not rise to it. "He's not encouraged," she said. "He's comfortable." Arthur grinned. Horatio said nothing, but later, when Sidonie suggested an outing. "I'll stay here," Horatio said. Sidonie blinked. "You always liked—" "I don't now." That silence was heavy. Helen felt it. She pretended not to. By the third month, something had shifted. Not declared. Felt. Horatio stopped pretending not to notice her absence. When she was quiet, he asked why. When she laughed, he watched. When she frowned, he softened. Helen found herself waiting for his steps in the corridor. She disliked that. She did it anyway. The reading room remained sacred, but Horatio began accompanying her more often. He never went inside. He waited, sometimes with a book, sometimes without. Once she emerged early. "You're still here." "Yes." "Why?" He shrugged. "I finished." She studied him. "You could have left." "I know." She nodded. That was acknowledgement. One night, Helen stood on the terrace alone. The stars were sharp, the air cold. She leaned on the railing, thinking of 4 months, of endings. Footsteps approached. She did not turn. "You'll catch cold," Horatio said quietly. "I won't." He joined her anyway. They stood side by side, not touching, but aware. "You've been quieter," he said. She exhaled. "I don't like change." He smiled faintly. "That's a lie." She smiled back. "I don't like wanting it." That was truth. He felt it like a blow. Not painful, just undeniable. Behind them, unseen, Sidonie watched from the window. She did not smile. She began planning. And in the house, Arthur slept peacefully for the first time since arriving. Because the place felt stable. Because Helen was still there. Because Horatio had not yet realized the moment he feared was already upon him. Helen did not intend to stay long. That was how it began. Arthur had begged to see the neighbouring house, not Sidonie's rooms, the grounds, the turtles by the old fountain. "You promised," he said, already tugging at her sleeve. "I promised a walk," Helen replied, "not exploration." Arthur grinned. "You always say that, and then you let me." She sighed. She did. The house was half asleep, furniture draped, windows veiled, a place waiting to remember itself. Arthur darted ahead, delighted. Helen followed more slowly. She liked the quiet. She liked places that felt paused. She rounded a corner and heard voices, close, too close. Sidonie's laugh, low, familiar. Horatio's voice followed, quieter. Helen stopped. She did not mean to listen. She did. "You didn't need to come," Sidonie was saying. "I did," Horatio replied. "You always did," she said lightly. There was a pause. Helen's fingers curled around the banister. Arthur crouched near the fountain, absorbed in turtles, unaware. Helen stepped closer, just enough to see. Horatio stood near the window. Sidonie faced him, too near. Her hand lifted, rested briefly on his sleeve. "You never liked seeing me unsettled," she said. He did not move away, not immediately. Helen's breath caught, not jealousy, shock, because she had trusted the space between them. Sidonie leaned in, almost. Horatio turned his head, just enough. The moment broke. Sidonie laughed softly. "You still hesitate," she murmured. Helen did not wait for more. She stepped back, quietly, carefully. She did not run. She gathered Arthur with practiced calm. "Come," she said gently. "It's time. But the turtles—" "Tomorrow." He pouted, then obeyed. They returned to Beaumont House without ceremony. Arthur chattered. Helen answered when required. Her voice sounded normal. That frightened her. She excused herself early, went to her room. Saturday. And felt nothing. Not anger, not heartbreak. Just clarity. This is what happens, she thought, when you stay too long. Dinner passed with careful civility. Horatio spoke less. Sidonie spoke more. Helen ate little. Arthur leaned against her again. She allowed it, but she did not look at Horatio. He noticed, immediately. Later, Horatio sought her out. He found her in the west corridor, looking out. "You left suddenly today," he said. "Yes." "Why?" She turned. Her expression was composed. Arthur was tired. That was true, not complete. He frowned. "You're distant." She smiled faintly. "I always was." That was not true. He felt it. That night, Helen stood on the balcony, stars sharp above her, air cold enough to wake sense. She wrapped her shawl tighter. She heard the door, did not turn. "You saw us," Horatio said, not accusing, not defensive, statement. Helen closed her eyes briefly. "Yes." Silence stretched. "I didn't—" he began. She lifted a hand. "I don't need an explanation." He stepped closer. "Are you jealous?" She laughed once, soft, without humor. "My Grace," she said, "I am your employee." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that matters." He searched her face, saw restraint, saw withdrawal. Fear touched him then, real fear. "I care what you think," he said. She looked at him at last, really looked. "And that," she replied quietly, "is precisely the problem." He had no response. She turned back to the night. "Good evening," she said, and left him there. Alone. Behind the closed door of her room, Helen leaned against the wall. Only once, only briefly. Then she straightened. She would not leave yet, but something had shifted. And Horatio, standing on the balcony alone, finally understood. Silence was no longer protection. It was loss. Helen did not avoid him. That would have been easier. She behaved exactly as she always had, which was worse. She arrived on time. She completed her work. She spoke when addressed, nothing more. Horatio felt the absence immediately. Not of her presence, of her openness. When she answered now, her voice was polite. When she listened, her eyes did not linger. When she passed him in the corridor, she did not slow. He had not realized how much she used to. Arthur noticed first. "You're different," he said one morning, squinting at her over his porridge. "I'm the same," Helen replied. "No," he said. "You don't smile before breakfast anymore." She paused, then smiled. Arthur frowned. "That one doesn't count." Horatio closed his paper. Sidonie watched the exchange with interest, too much interest. Sidonie pressed closer, physically, socially. She sat beside Horatio at supper, touched his arm when she laughed, reminded him of things he had forgotten or pretended to. "You used to hate silence," she said one evening. "I still do," he replied. Helen did not look up. Sidonie's eyes flicked to her, sharp, satisfied. That night, Horatio did not sleep. He replayed the scene in the neighboring house, the hesitation, the space, the moment Helen had seen. He had not done anything wrong. That was the problem. He had allowed the appearance of wrong, and Helen lived by appearances because they were often all a woman had. He rose early, found Helen already working. "You're up," he said. "Yes." "You're tired." "Yes." He hesitated. "I owe you clarity." She did not stop writing. "I don't require it." "That isn't true." Her pen paused, just once. "I don't require explanations," she said calmly. "Only consistency." He felt that land, hard. Saturday arrived. The carriage waited. Horatio did not get inside. Helen stopped short. "You're not coming." "No?" That surprised her. He saw it. "I have business here." She nodded. "All right." She climbed in alone. The door shut. The carriage rolled away. Horatio stood in the drive long after it was gone. He had chosen distance. It did not feel like restraint. It felt like punishment. At the reading room, Helen read nothing. She sat, thought, finished the afternoon restless. When the carriage returned, she found Horatio waiting. He helped her down without touching her. That hurt more than if he had. That evening, Mrs. Beaumont spoke at last. "You are being foolish," she said quietly, pouring tea. Horatio did not respond. "You have always believed care required control," she continued. "That is untrue." "Is it?" she asked. "Or is it simply safer?" He looked away. "She will leave," his mother said. "Not dramatically, not bitterly. She will simply go." He knew. That was what terrified him. Later, he found Helen on the terrace again. Always the terrace. Always where honesty crept in uninvited. "You don't owe me anything," she said before he could speak. "I know." "And yet you're here." "Yes." She folded her arms. "Say what you came to say." He swallowed. "I didn't choose her," he said. "I chose habit." "That's worse," Helen replied gently. "I know." Silence. "I don't want to own you," he said. "I don't want you to depend on me." Her breath caught. "You already do," she said. "You just won't admit it." He met her gaze. "What do you want from me?" She thought, longer than he liked. "Nothing," she said at last, "until you know the answer to that yourself." She turned to leave. He let her, because this time restraint was not kindness. It was fear, and fear, he was beginning to understand, was the only thing truly standing between them. Morning did not rush them. That, too, was new. Helen woke to light rather than sound, pale and careful, slipping through the curtains as though the room had agreed not to startle her. For a moment she did not move. Habit urged her to rise, to put space between herself and whatever she had allowed. Then she became aware of Horatio beside her, not holding her, not retreating, simply there. His breathing was even, unguarded in a way she had never seen him allow. One hand rested open on the cushion near hers, close enough to touch without assuming it would. She stared at it longer than necessary. "This is where you decide," she told herself. "Stay or go." She didn't decide yet. She shifted instead, testing the moment. Horatio stirred immediately, eyes opening without confusion, as if he had already been half awake. "Good morning," he said quietly. Her voice came out softer than intended. "Good morning." He waited, reading her the way he always did. When she didn't move away, his shoulders eased just enough to notice. "You didn't disappear," he said. "Neither did you." "I promised." She studied his face. No triumph, No relief sharp enough to feel possessive, just care. That matters, she said. I know. She swung her legs over the side of the settee and stood, smoothing her skirts with a familiarity that felt almost comic now. He watched her, not as a man claiming, but as one learning. I should go to my room, she said. Yes. No argument, no persuasion. She paused at the door anyway. Horatio. He looked up. You don't have to keep being careful, she said. I won't mistake it for indifference. His expression shifted, not guarded, but thoughtful. Then I'll try to be honest instead, he said. She nodded once. That was enough. The house noticed before anyone spoke. Breakfast was quieter, but not tense. A maid smiled at Helen without apology. Someone had opened the curtains in the east corridor that were usually left half-drawn. Change, again, incremental, inevitable. Helen returned to her room and dressed for the day with less ceremony than usual. She caught herself humming once and stopped. No, she thought, half amused. Don't tempt fate. Work resumed. It always did. By late morning, they were back in the study, the shape of routine settling them both. Helen dictated, Horatio annotated. Their rhythm found itself again, altered but intact. At one point she reached for ink and found the bottle empty. She frowned. It was full yesterday. Horatio rose at once. I'll fetch another. You don't need to. He was already moving. She watched him go, irritation flaring out of habit, then fading just as quickly. Let him, she told herself. This is not a trap. He returned moments later, set the bottle down, and resumed his seat without comment. Thank you hovered on her tongue. She said it anyway. Thank you. He looked at her then, surprised in a way that made her smile. You're welcome. That small exchange did more than any declaration could have. The tension returned in the afternoon. It always did. A letter arrived, sealed in a familiar hand. Helen recognized it immediately. Her chest tightened. Horatio noticed at once. Bad news? He asked. Potentially, she replied too lightly. He didn't press. She opened the letter, read it once, then folded it again with care. It's from my last employer, she said. She wants to know if I'm settled, if I've adjusted. The word carried weight. Horatio leaned back slightly. And have you? Helen laughed softly. That depends on what one calls settled. What do you want to tell her? She hesitated. That I am capable, she said, and that I am not beholden. He considered that. And is that true? She met his gaze. Yes, she said, because I chose this. His breath eased. Then tell her exactly that. She did. She wrote quickly, decisively, sealing the letter before doubt could intervene. When she finished, she sat back, suddenly tired. Horatio noticed. You don't have to stay, he said. She smiled faintly. You always say that. And you always stay anyway. She looked at him, eyes clear. I'm learning, she said, that staying doesn't always mean losing. He held her gaze. And I'm learning, he replied, that loving someone doesn't require taking them. The words settled between them, quiet and true. Outside, the house went on breathing. Inside, Helen realized that for the first time in years, she was not bracing for departure. She was preparing for something far more frightening. Belonging, chosen, not demanded. Helen did not plan to stay out late. That was the lie she told herself. The air was cool. The house, quiet. The kind of stillness that invited honesty if you stood in it long enough. She leaned against the balcony rail and looked at the stars. Too many of them. She had always preferred rooms. Rooms could be left. Footsteps sounded behind her. She didn't turn. I wondered where you went, Horatio said. She exhaled. You didn't look very hard. No, he agreed. I knew. Silence settled. Not awkward. Waited. You've been careful with me, he said at last. She smiled faintly. That's one word for it. Detached, he added. She closed her eyes briefly. That's another. He stepped closer. Not crowding, not retreating. I don't want to be mistaken, he said quietly. Not by you. She faced him then. Her expression was calm. Too calm. That's the problem, she said. You don't like being mistaken. I don't like being claimed. I'm not trying to claim you." She laughed once, soft, without humor. "You bought me books so I wouldn't have to leave the house," she said. "You arrange your days around where I'll be. You notice when I'm unhappy before I speak." He didn't deny it. "That's care," he said. "That's attachment," she replied. "And attachment becomes expectation." His jaw tightened. "You think I'd trap you?" "No," she said. "I think you'd offer me comfort until I forgot how to refuse it." That hurt, because it was close enough to truth to matter. He held her gaze. "I don't want you smaller," he said. "I want you beside me." She shook her head. "You don't know the difference yet." He took another step, close now, near enough that the space between them felt deliberate. "I know this," he said. "When you pulled away, the house went quiet, in the wrong way." Her breath caught. "I noticed," he continued, "and I hated myself for letting you believe I could be careless with what matters to you." She searched his face, saw no defense, only fear, real fear. "You don't owe me certainty," he said. "I won't ask for it." She swallowed. "Then what are you asking?" He hesitated, not because he didn't know, because he did. "Stay," he said, "not because you need to, because you want to." The word landed between them, heavy, alive. She stepped back, just half a step. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't say things you can't live up to." He reached for her, stopped himself, hands hovering, waiting. That mattered more than the touch would have. "I will never make you choose between yourself and me," he said. "If I do, you should leave." Her composure cracked, just enough. She stepped forward. This time she closed the distance. Her hand rested briefly on his chest. Steady, human. "You terrify me," she said. His voice was rough. "Good," she smiled despite herself. That wasn't a compliment. "I know." And then she kissed him, not carefully, not recklessly, honestly, the kind of kiss that happens because restraint has finally failed. His hands came up instinctively, then stopped, paused, as if asking permission even now. She answered by kissing him again, slower this time, deliberate. When they parted, her forehead rested against his. Neither spoke. The night felt altered. "I won't disappear," she said quietly, "but I won't belong to you." He nodded. "I wouldn't want you if you did." She laughed softly. "I don't believe you." "You will." She stepped back. Regret flashed across his face. She saw it. "You don't get to panic now," she said gently. "That was your choice." "And yours," he replied. "Yes," she agreed. "It was." She left him there, not running, not retreating, choosing. And Horatio Beaumont stood alone on the balcony, heart unsteady, knowing with absolute clarity. This was no longer about control. It was about courage. Helen Radcliffe packed quietly. Not because she was angry, not because she was afraid, because the 4 months were ending. That was the agreement. She folded her dresses with care, returned borrowed books to their shelves, left nothing behind that could be mistaken for hesitation. The house noticed, even if it pretended not to. Arthur hovered in the doorway. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes." "Forever?" She smiled. "That depends on what people decide to do next." He scowled. "I don't like decisions." She knelt. "Neither do I," she said, "but they happen anyway." He hugged her hard. She held him back, just as firmly. Horatio did not stop her. That was the hardest part. He did not offer excuses, did not invent reasons, did not ask her to stay because it would be easier. He watched and waited. Mrs. Beaumont found Helen in the morning room. "You have changed my son," she said quietly. Helen shook her head. "No," she replied. "I made him uncomfortable enough to change himself." The older woman studied her, then nodded. "That is much rarer." The carriage was ready by noon. Helen stood at the foot of the steps, gloves on, posture steady. Horatio approached, not hurried, not restrained. Present. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes." A pause. "I won't stop you," he said. "I won't bargain, and I won't ask you to stay out of fear." She met his gaze. Good, she thought. He finally understands. "But," he continued. "I won't pretend this doesn't matter." Her throat tightened. "I'm listening." "I don't need you," he said, "and I won't ask you to need me." She nodded. "But I want you," he said, "and I will choose you every day you choose me back." No promises of safety, no promises of ease, only honesty. "And if I don't," she asked, "then I will let you go," he said, "with respect." She believed him. That was everything. Helen inhaled, long, slow. She looked at the carriage, then at him. "You never once asked me to stay," she said. "I know. You never tried to make yourself necessary." "I learned." She smiled. That was the point. She stepped closer, close enough that the choice was visible. "I won't belong to you," she said. "I wouldn't accept it," he replied. "I won't give up my independence. I would lose you if you did." She laughed softly. Then, "I will stay," she said, "not because I'm safe, not because I'm needed, but because I want to see what we become when neither of us is pretending." Horatio did not speak. He simply reached for her hand, waited. She placed hers in his. Not surrender, agreement. Arthur whooped. Mrs. Beaumont closed her eyes. The house exhaled. That evening, Helen went to the reading room, alone, by choice. Horatio did not follow. When she returned, he was waiting, not watching, not guarding, waiting. "You came back," he said. "I always do," she replied. He smiled. So did she. And for the first time, neither of them wondered who would leave first. Because love, when chosen freely, does not require an exit plan. It only requires courage, and they had finally learned how to risk that together.
Look, the moon is so bright tonight.
It's beautiful, but not as beautiful as you.
I learned how to leave before wanting stayed. How to pack my heart like a borrowed name.
I've worn my strength like a winter coat, too heavy to feel, too tight to hold.
I don't ask for hands, I don't wait for doors. I survived on less than I hoped for.
I learned how to stand without asking why, how to smile when the room looked away.
I let the world decide what I lost before I decided what I'd keep.
I don't reach first, I don't explain. I've made a home out of quiet days.
If I stay too long, I start to feel.
If I look too close, I start to hope.
And hope has teeth if you let it speak.
This is love
In disguise,
not asking, not claiming, not saying its name. This is love
in disguise.
standing beside you and staying the same. It's not the words, it's not the vow, it's how you don't leave when you could walk out.
This is love in disguise.
You never said stay,
You just stay,
never made promises you couldn't keep. You watched my silence,
like it mattered or like it wasn't something to fix.
you never asked me to be more, never treated me like something lost. You spoke to me like I was whole, like the man I am was enough.
If I reach for you, will you pull away?
If I lean too close,
Will you ask me to stay? We don't say it, but we both know disguise. Not loud, not certain, not just for the crowd. This is love in disguise, quietly choosing not to bow. It's not the dream we planned out loud, it's what we build when no one's around. This is love in disguise.
If tomorrow asks me to stand alone,
I won't make you choose.
and if the world takes what we never named,
I'll still be here. I don't need forever, promise tonight. Just don't disappear from my sight. This is love in disguise, finally seen for what it's always been. This is love in disguise, not hiding now, not afraid to begin. It's not perfection, it's not control, it's choosing each other as we are whole. This is love in disguise.
edge into the sky.
I didn't faint,
But here we are,
and here we stand,
still
in love. In disguise.